Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at the library this evening. Welcome to those of you who are watching us at home through live stream as well. As you leave today, if you would please take a moment to fill out the evaluation forms that we've left for you. These forms help us plan for future programs. And speaking of future programs, we are grateful to have Allison here as our visiting artist. She'll be teaching hybrid writing on Wednesday, August 17th at 6 p.m. This class will look at examples of hybrid work, and attendees will create a broadside, an art print that incorporates imagery and printed text. So you don't want to miss that. Get that one on your calendars. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Allison. Allison Blevins is a poet and publisher who writes confessional free verse poetry and finds inspiration in both traditional and pop culture. She writes to confess her sins and connect with the world she feels largely disconnected from as a neurodiverse person and a person with a physical disability. Her work centers difference and queerness in a world that seeks to push her to the margins. She uses hybrid techniques to open the boundaries of free verse. Her work lives in a space between poetry, flash nonfiction, and abstract art. Please help me welcome Allison Blevins.
I love it. It's the most silent clapping in the history of clapping. All right, welcome to Introduction to Publishing. And I think any writer, you know, this just feels like such a strange thing to teach because it feels like you're never good at it because it's so difficult to do. But I wanted to start by asking, what do you know about publishing, about the process? Do you have questions now? Just so I gauge what folks are thinking about in being here. Yeah, can you make a lot of money? Some people can. Yeah, some people can, depending on what you write. Okay, I'll touch on that a little. Anybody else have thoughts? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. The day of the envelope is over. There's only a few that even allow paper submissions. Okay, good to know. So my first tip in publishing is the idea of small to large. And what I mean by that is that there's a process for publishing. I'm primarily a poet, but I write and have published memoir as well. And fiction is not my jam, and it works a little differently, and I will talk about that, especially if you're a fiction writer. Please just interrupt and say, tell me about fiction more. So what I mean by small to large is that you want to start by publishing pieces first. So you're going to send out poems. Same for fiction. You're going to send out pieces of small fiction. You'll send out bits of memoir to literary journals and magazines. You likely are not going to send out a book and have it published immediately and make your millions of dollars. Some people do, but it's not likely. So start small, and as you work small, you get a feel for what the industry looks like. And I think that authors think that, you know, this is a creative endeavor, which it is, but it is very much a business with its own rules and politics, and, you know, the side that's not the fun writing and creative side. So the first step is journals, literary magazines and journals, and then I publish chapbooks at my press primarily, and so I'm a huge advocate and fan of chapbooks, and I think that they give you a way to get a feel for what it's like to publish a larger book and how to put a larger book together. Chapbooks, if you're a fiction writer, you might think of it like a novella, and so those two things are very similar. They're usually between 20 to 40 pages. Some presses have different ideas about how long a chapbook might be. There are micro chapbooks now. My magazine publishes or runs 3 competitions for micro chapbooks, so there are people doing that, and they're also doing it in print, not just online, and that'd be about 10 to 15 pieces or pages if you want to do a micro chapbook. So I think it's a good way to get your toes wet. So you don't have to think about, I have to write 100 pages. You can write 20 pages. That's easier to do. Chapbooks usually have smaller print runs, about 100 books, and they aren't going to have as much press associated with them. So it's not that they're easier to publish, it's just that it's a different kind of a beast. And in the pay to publish market, which is what we have going on now, modern publishing, they're usually a smaller submission fee. Books are next, they're bigger, so we're going smaller to larger. And then I always say anthologies after, but anthologies are their own different strange thing. So you might publish a poem or a piece of short fiction in an anthology that's never been published in a literary magazine. You might publish a piece that's been in a chapbook. You might publish a piece that's been in a book. But publishing works up. So if you publish a poem in a chapbook, you can never go back and publish it in a lit mag. So I really encourage you to publish as much of something that you think might be a book or a chapbook in literary magazines before you send out that book, because once it's a book, it's done. It's not going to go in a journal anywhere. Once it's been in a book, you can never put it in a chapbook. So if you want to do a few chapbooks, then those pieces can go into a book. But if it's been in a full-length book, you can never go backwards. So work your way up, small to large. But anthologies generally reprint, so you can print in an anthology at any stage of the process. But I sort of think of them as something that I would send a piece that's already been in a book to. Make sense? Small to large? Good. So number 2 is promoting yourself and resources for publishing. If you're not on Facebook because you're a young person, that's fine, but please join anyway. And I know that the young folks want to be on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and those are all great places for writers too, and I encourage you, if you're a writer, to get on them. I can't manage that many. I have an Instagram, but I can't really deal with it. But I think Twitter is really great for writers. If you're an artist, Instagram is really great. But all of the literary magazines are on all of these places. All of the presses are on all of them. And for me, Facebook has just been the most helpful resource for promoting myself and for finding information about publishing and for support. So if you go to Facebook and you just search submissions, you can see here's submissions, magazines, and publishers. I'm in that group. Calls for submissions, I'm in that group. If you just search poetry, there's probably 1,000 groups for that. Fiction writers, I'm sure there's 1 million groups for that. And these are going to have thousands and thousands of members. any sort of call for group, those are the ones to join. I'm in a group for women poets. That's been just an amazing resource. So these are going to be, there's one called Authors for Authors, promote your book. These are going to be places that you can promote yourself, that you can find out what other people are doing, and that you can find calls for submissions and for publishing. Again, you should probably be on Instagram and Twitter, and I can't totally figure it out. But so like if you look at my feed, I follow a bunch of different literary magazines. That's just a regular person. But you know, here they're posting about submissions. So my suggestion is to spend a few hours on your social media and start liking every literary magazine that you know of. And once you start doing it, then that little thing pops up that says, oh, you might like this, you might like this, and they'll all be literary magazines and presses. And then when that starts happening to you, you just follow. And so your feed becomes all the information that is current and that you need to have on social media. In terms of publishing, I would say get a website. Here is mine. It's unpleasant, but you definitely need to have one. And I can see I use Squarespace. It's one of the more expensive platforms. There's free ones. So get a free one, because when we publish people, we will kind of check them out. So people want to see that you have some sort of presence, especially in terms of publishing a book or a chapbook. Writers are really expected, unless you're publishing with Random House and writing about teenage vampires, you have to do a ton of the work. And so they want to know that you're willing to do it, and it happens online. So, you know, you just have your list of your work and your books and information about how they can contact you, and then like events that you're kind of working on. That's what I put on mine. I modeled mine after another writer, so just find writers that you like and steal from them, see what they're doing, and then you do that too. Okay, this is New Pages. So newpages.com, and it's one of my first go-tos in order to find publishing opportunities and information. You can find all kinds of stuff, but this calls and contests is going to be the spot that you want to go first. Here's calls for submissions, literary events and writing programs, writing contests. Here's a big list of writing contests. So they have just all kinds of information. Is there a clock in here, Hotspur? I can't. There isn't one. 6:15, okay. I may have to be like, time, occasionally. This is Poets and Writers. This is another one of your very best friends. They have, you know, just all kinds of information. So in Publish Your Writing, here's writing contests, literary magazines, small presses, literary agents if you're going to make the big bucks, questions and answers. You can promote your writing. They do have a magazine. It's a good one to get if you're going to subscribe to a magazine. I bet the library has it. You wouldn't even have to subscribe. You could just read it for free. Programs and partnerships, and you can also, you know, read work here. This is CLIMP. It's the Community of Literary Magazines and Presses, and it is probably one of the other places that I just spend tons and tons of time. This is the calls for submissions, and you can see that it's just like absolutely up to date. That they're, they're putting stuff up every single day, and you can look through, and you can sort. You can search by publisher, and they also have lots of here's events, here's a directory of publishers, here's programs and opportunities. If you follow them on Facebook, they also put out information every month. They'll do a newsletter of these are the books we recommend, or these are all of the opportunities that are happening this month. So Facebook's again, a really great way to get this information. And they sort of condense it for you every month and give you a digest of information. This one is funnier, and it's called Published to Death. And so here's the calls for calls for submissions. And so they are giving you a list here of different places that you could go. So like they recommend new pages and poets and writers as well. Here's Trisha Hopkinson, and she used to do a blog with opportunities, and she also would interview editors, which is super useful, and I'll talk about that in a minute of what editors look for. And she just stopped, but all of that backlog of information is still there on Trisha's blog. So it's just a wealth of knowledge and information that she has given to the world, and she did it for years. So it's definitely worth checking out. And then just tons and tons of information. So this is by July, by dates. And then up here, just even more information about anything you might want to know about agents, where to get a review for your book, free contests, which is really important, writing conferences, all kinds of stuff. So other than these resources, again, I just want to recommend Facebook groups as places to find information. And if you make sure you like just as much as you possibly can. Another suggestion is to any author you like, look in the back of their book and find out in their bio, where have they published work. Especially poets, there'll be a list of every place that a poem first appeared. And if you like them and you say, I write like this person, then that's the place you should be sending work, because you know then that they like that style of writing. So if you read political poetry, then that acknowledgments page in the back of that book is going to be your best resource, because you know those are the journals that enjoy political poetry. If you write lyrical poetry, if you write feminist work, then make sure that don't do the work that somebody else has already done. If you write like somebody, then find out where they're publishing and get that information from them. Does this make sense? All right. There are 1,000 more places to find information about where to send your work. These are the top big go-to places, I think, and they're really good places to start. But you may find once you start really writing and sending out that there's somewhere else that that you want to get your information. There's a lot of literary magazines that will point people in the right direction. Brevity has some information about where to send other work, and when they reject your work, they tell you where else you can send it. And Adroit has, resources on their page. So there are a million other places to find work. And I'll also talk in the next one, I'll talk about the two other big ones. So promote yourself and know what your resources are. That's number 2. Yeah, please ask questions. Yes. Yes. Yeah, you can have 2 pages on Facebook because you do use like a different email. And so smart writers, not this one, have an author page. So when I had like 300 Facebook friends. And then when I started really publishing, then people like you and you like them back, like you said. And it was fine at first, but now I have thousands and they're all writers and people I don't know. And I want to publish, photos of my kids and on Facebook. And so my Facebook is ruined. So yes, this is just a really great point that I should have written down and told you, but have separate ones. I don't use Instagram for anything but writing, so in that case I think it's fine. But I want to use Facebook for other purposes and now don't really as much. And I think the point also that you're making about liking people and them liking you is so important, because if you're going to send work out, I will find out who's the editor-in-chief, who's the poetry editor, and then I go at them on Facebook. Why wouldn't you? If it's a place that looks at bios and they see your name, that's how brains work. Oh, I know that name. So you should add them. When they reject you, add them anyway. If they accept you, you should add them, and don't just add that editor. Add everybody on the masthead, and then they'll start liking you, and you'll see what's happening on their page. It's also a really great way to know when something nice is about to happen for you. If somebody you've submitted to adds you, your heart goes, is that good news? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But yeah, and writers are absolutely doing this. And I do say, be wary when somebody adds you and they 3 or 4 writer friends but if I'm 300-400 friends in common with people I don't know, because they're just writer people. But yeah, add them. I also think if you love a writer and you read their book, add them on Facebook, and then send them a little note that says, your book changed my life. I really loved your book. Because writers are human beings. They're not fancy. And you're not only going to make their day, but they're going to remember that you did that. And they probably read work for a magazine somewhere, or they're going to judge a contest, or they're going to whatever. So because it's a business, you have to rub elbows, and we're spread out all over the world. So there's no physical elbows to rub. It's not like being a lawyer. Hotspurs, it's a really great point. You should teach the class next time. Okay, so my next point for publishing is to organize. Organization is 100% key. There are people who organize their work in a spreadsheet, and more power to those people whose brains can work on a spreadsheet, but mine does not. If you have 500 poems, there's no way. And so use a spreadsheet if you would like. It is on my list of recommendations. I also think you need to have some sort of structure for organizing your work on your computer. I used to organize my poems by new, labeled in a folder, new, revised, this is terrible, don't ever send it anywhere, and published. And that eventually became an inefficient system for management. So I organized my work by book now, or by book generally. But so you need a system, and it's probably going to grow and change as you publish more and write more. But think about it now, because like new and revised is not a good system. I still have the "this is terrible, don't send it anywhere" file. So this is Duotrope, and it is $50 a year, which makes it an incredibly affordable tool for writers. And it is my favorite toy in all of writing, and I look at it every single day. So you can search. I feel like it's not big enough. Can your eyeballs even see that back there? Sort of. I don't know how to make it bigger. It's not. Oh, it did go. Technology. All right. So you can search for publishers. You can search for agents. You can search by title or name. So this would be like a search by a press or a publication. Here's an index of different kinds of listings, and then they give you these like little categories, which are so fun. Like you can just search all kinds of things. Agents and just poetry, and then you can sort them. They've done just all of this amazing work for you. Here's some publishing news, recent responses from publishers. These interviews are something I'm going to talk about in a minute, but this is just an incredibly helpful tool. Here's reports, guides, but I can show you how I use Duotrope. So here's my control panel, and it'll tell you like how many you have pending, how many you've sent in the past 12 months, sent this month, and your acceptances. Here you can manage your list of pieces, saved searches, deadlines. I don't know what profile and your ignore list. It has so many features I don't even sort of know what they all are. My deadlines page is long, and I use it extensively. So I was talking about how you should like everything on Facebook and take note of it. You can open a tab, which I do, and I think, I'm going to do that. And then your computer, crashes or whatever it is, and you lose that tab. So the more responsible thing is to come to Duotrope, and then you search for, let's say, there's pork belly. So you saw on Facebook that pork belly has a deadline. So you come and you find it, and you click on it, and then you push this track button. I should send to that. So you track it. Oh, I already had. That way I come here and I I'll come like every few days and I'll say, oh no, this one's coming up, I should send to that. It is a universal truth for publishers that the vast majority of submissions come in the last 10, 15 days. I don't know if that's because everybody's using Duotrope now. They trickle in over the submission window, but they come in the last few days, and I'm just very guilty. I'll send it the day before the window closes. And there are a lot of benefits for that, and one is that they don't have your work as long usually if they wait until the window closes to send out their notifications. And so you can see that I missed 2, which is a real bummer. And so then I go down here if I missed them, and you can click on it, and then you can add them back. I mean, come on, it does all of the work for you, right? So you don't even have to, you can just track their next deadline, and then you update it and remove that one, and there it is. I missed it, but I have another chance to submit again. This one, you can see there's a little, this little guy, and that's a note to myself that I saw somewhere on Facebook that they want memoir. And lucky for me, I just finished one. So I'm going to send them something. And then I also make these little notes. Oh, Dio, what a dream journal or press that would be. So I sent to them last time, and I got a personal rejection for my full-length book, which means you should send again. If they send you a personal rejection, that's a win. It's better than an acceptance sometimes. That's me. I apologize. Telling me I have to do something as I'm doing something. Okay. So, Duotrope. What time are we at, Hotspur? Oh, okay. So I don't want to talk about it much more, but you can see the benefit of this, yes, that this does absolutely all of the work for you. Another tab is my favorite. So some journals you can't track, so I add them over here so that I remember, like this is literally like, you know, all the tabs that you'd have open on your computer. That's how I think about it. And I try to come in here every few months. And so this one's closed, these temporary closed, but this one's open, so I should send them something. And you can make notes. Here's all kinds of notes that I somehow will use at some point, unless I forget to send to them. Your pieces, I think, is really useful too. So you can see all of your work. This little thing means it's an acceptance. If it's simultaneously submitted somewhere, it'll tell you that there. And then my submissions, which is really bad right now because I don't have a lot of work out. So you can see everything that you've sent, and then you can do this fun thing if you want to obsessively go to your journal where you've sent the work, and this one doesn't have it, but a lot of times it'll say like they sent out responses 12 days ago, and so you can go, oh, they're sending responses, and be a crazy person. And writers talk about doing this all of the time. Let's see if the Missouri Review has one. They do. So they have this report. So if I had sent work, 67 days ago, I would know, oh, maybe I'm going to get a response soon, and you can be crazy about it. So that is Duotrope, and it is very useful. They also have, they have somewhere just, dates. You can look by, not this. Well, I'm not going to find it, of course, because you're all watching me do it. But they have a list of work or of journals that are accepting work and when it's closing. So you can see every journal pretty much uses Duotrope, and when it's closing, or if they have like a themed issue when that is closing. So you can also find, not just track your work, but you can find places to submit on Duotrope. If you come across a journal that's not on here, which does happen, then you email them and you say, hey, you don't have this one, I want to track it, and they'll add it for you, which is super helpful. This is submittable. So lots of journals use submittable. Harbor Review, that's my journal, it uses it, and our press does as well. So when you go to a journal and you want to submit work, there'll be a submittable button. You'll click on it and it'll take you to a page that looks like this, where you pick the thing you're submitting for and you submit. Duotrope has its own system. It's called Duosoma. So some of them will you'll submit through there, and that's also handy. Sometimes you email people and then you have to track it on your Duotrope yourself. But so this is what it looks like from this position. And then you can go to my submissions here. Submittable for submitters is free. So it tracks your work that you've sent to a journal using Submittable. So you can't track work that you send other places, but a lot of journals use Submittable, so you can see, here that these are all the places that I've sent that has used Submittable in the past. But another really important button on Submittable is this Discover button. And here we find yet another way to find places to send your work to. So you can search, you can filter for like journals that you're following. If you want something you don't have to pay a fee for, you can search that way. You can search by deadlines. So this is everything that has a deadline by Wednesday the 20th. If you want to get really tricky, and this is maybe advanced submitting, but you can find this information in Submittable, and I find it really useful, that all these statistics. So the 6 minutes is the fastest response they've sent in this tracking period. That's the average, that's the median, that's the max number of days. They only respond to 75% of people, but there's 20 withdrawals, so that's why. They take 1.13% of submissions. That's how many people get rejections. And then so when you are using this to track, you'll help add to all of these statistics. So if you are starting out, I wouldn't send to this journal. So when I started sending out, I sent to journals that take 50%, 25% of work, because then you're going to get yeses, and that's going to feel good. And then the more you do it, then the more selective you can start to be. If the journals that only take 1% have been rejecting, then maybe try sending to the 5%, the 12%. So I feel like when I start talking about this, it sounds crazy. It becomes clear that it's very much a business. None of this is about being creative and interesting. This is about like tracking numbers like a crazy person, but that is really this side of it. So number 3 is organize. And maybe develop obsessive compulsive disorder in the process. Okay, so number 4, I want to talk about money, agents, and rejection. And we'll talk about agents first, because of your "am I going to get rich" question. So lots of writers ask, do I need one? And the answer is no, you don't. If you are a fiction writer and you have a novel and you have a solid publishing history, then maybe you do need an agent. And there are Facebook groups called How to Get an Agent, How to Write an Agent Letter. And I would join one, and I would get copies of letters that have been successful that other people have sent in getting an agent. Because if you have vampires who marry werewolves and do magic young adult novel that's really good, I mean, I would get an agent and I would make $1 million. So, so most of us don't need agents yet, but you might, and there are ways to get them. You know, people get agents, they do pitches. The library has, it'll never come to me, but they have a literary festival, True Lit, and you can pitch to presses, and I don't know if there's any agents, but Kansas City's got one that's happening really soon where you get a chance to talk to agents. So you can find opportunities like that, and an agent might be like, let's do this, and I don't discourage that. I really think that people have crazy good luck getting published that way. Lightning does happen. But for poets, most poets aren't agented. And they'll share like one of the really famous ones. You don't need an agent to get work published. And I think even fiction writers, people want to see a solid publishing history before usually they're going to publish that novel. And the way to do that is like this tedious way. So then the issue of money, because publishing, it used to be where you put your poems in an envelope with a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they sent them back to you, and then with a letter that said no, thank you, and then you send them back out again. But so because so many publishers use Submittable, it's expensive. And if you want it to be less expensive, then you have to be a Clump member, which was the other site that I showed you. So publishers join Clump, and then they get a cheaper Submittable, but it's all money going out from publishers. So my press is a nonprofit. We have no money, and we have to pay for these submission portals because there's no other way to keep track of all of the submissions. And so we have to make money somehow, and the way we do that is that you pay to submit work to us. So you're going to pay $3 usually for a general submission. Some of them take them for free. We do have some, my press has some free submission windows. Some of them will waive submission fees if you write to them and you say, I'm poor, I'm begging you, will you please let me send you my work for free? Lots of places are nice. We do that all the time. But generally you're going to pay about $3 for a submission. Even Duosoma, which is the Duotrope's version of Submittable, publishers pay for that. So unless you're sending it to an email address, you're probably going to pay. Lots of presses and magazines still use email. So there are lots of places that you can submit for free. If you submit to a contest, a lot of them are free, but a lot of them are going to cost you $15, $20, $25. Most chapbook submission fees are going to start at about $15. To submit a book, it's going to cost you probably $20, maybe $30. Some are $50. Don't send there. And those numbers really, really start to add up. So what I did when I was a beginning writer, as I said, I'm going to spend $50 a month. And not anymore, because you can really spend a lot if I have my own separate writing account, and if I win a prize, then the money goes in there, and I do consultations, so the money goes in there, and all of that feeds my sending money to journals addiction that I have in submitting. So you need a strategy which to deal with the money side of it. I do want to say that the vast majority of my publications, the books, were from free submissions. So you just have to look. It is easy to just be like, oh, I'll send that $5, I'll send that $3, and we need your money. So I do suggest you do that too. But at the end of my $50, then I have to start looking for free places to send stuff. And every book I have, except for I think 2, they were free submission window. So it happens. It really does happen. And there's lists everywhere of free places that you can send work. Yeah. Simultaneous submissions, yes, it's ethical and necessary. So if you have, let's say you have 10 great poems, which sometimes that's all I have, because they've been published or I'm not writing. So I've got 10 poems. If I send them out, as you saw here, it may be 525 days until I hear from them. You're never going to publish anything. So you can also find this information on Duotrope here, simultaneous, and that means it's okay to simultaneously submit to them. There are some who won't take simultaneous submissions, and I won't send them my work. And I mean, that's up to you. But any magazine that just wants the right to look at your poem, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. There are rules other places, but here, send it. I just like carpet bomb your submissions. Send them everywhere. Why wouldn't you? And so if you get an acceptance, then you have to do the work of emailing them or messaging them and saying, hey, I got an acceptance. And so you do have to withdraw them once it's been accepted somewhere, and that can be kind of a pain in the butt. But the great thing about using Duotrope is that you know exactly where that work is, and so it makes it much easier to withdraw it when you simultaneously submit. You have to. It's a really good question. So the other piece of this, money agents and rejection, is rejection. And rejection stinks. It's no fun. But lots of groups online will have what they call the 100 Rejection Club. And your goal is to get 100 rejections in a year. And as a writer, you should shoot for rejections instead of acceptances. You should accumulate them like gold, because that means you did the hard work of sending out the work. And you should notice that the more I talk, the more it sounds like this is going to take you forever. So what I do is I say, this is how I write, this is my creative time, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour, I'm going to send work out. Because if you don't set aside time, it is like a job, this sending out, then you probably won't do it. So I dedicate some time to that. That's very separate from my creative writing. But my goal is definitely get rejections. There's a list on Duotrope of the top 25 most difficult journals to get into for poetry, nonfiction, fiction. Send to them. Do it every year. Why not? What if they took your piece? Go for it. And just get rejections. And the more you get, the easier it will be. My first few were just agony. But I have, I think my acceptance ratios, it usually wavers between like 7% and 15%. So that means that only 7% of the work I send out is going to be accepted, and that means I roll around in rejections all the time. Get them, love them, and learn to not be so devastated by them. You have to. What's my time? 6:50. Oh my God, no! I have 2 more points. Okay. What do editors want? We'll go fast. There are editor interviews on Duotrope, and I think that's a really good place to look. Let's see. This one doesn't have them, but it'll be right over here. So you can read what they're looking for, what they want in a submission, and that's invaluable information. If you want to know what an editor wants, read the magazine. We spend all of this time, so Harbor Review publishes 2 issues a year. It takes us 6 months to make an issue, and people don't read it because you don't read poetry, and it's heartbreaking. And we know, we get 3,000 submissions, and we publish 10 poems an issue. And I know that the vast majority of those people have never read an issue, so you have to read them. Read them, and that's how you'll know what they want. Read the book acknowledgments. I already said that. So you'll know that the journals that publish the books you like that kind of work. We want submissions that are neat and clean. Don't put your information in the center. Don't use fancy font. We just want to be able to read it. If we have 3,000 submissions, we can't mess around with your wingdings font. So neat and clean. And all of these websites for journals are going to have a list of rules of what they want. So you come here, and this is how many rules there are. And sometimes the page will just go on and on and on. They want 3 to 5 poems. When we say that and you send 12, we want to murder you. Even if they're the best poems we've ever read, we're going to be mad. So don't do it. They want work that embraces risks and is lyrical. So if you write narrative poems, this isn't the place for you. Voice to a range of lived experiences. Don't submit multiple packets. So read the rules. Usually there's a lot of them, and follow them, because when you don't follow them, it's just really, really annoying. We can come back to that one for questions if we need to, because now I have to go fast. The last point is self-publishing. Should you do it or should you not? And there are a lot of pros and cons to self-publishing. Self-publishers now have a wide range of just like options, and it's easier now than it's ever been before. Your 2 best options are Ingram, Print on Demand, and KDP, which is Amazon's. KDP is really easy to use. I know that because that's what my press uses, and I have almost no technical knowledge, and I figured it out. So you can really do a lot. We use Canva, which is a basic design program, to do a lot of our book covers, and I can do them, and I know nothing about any of it. So self-publishers have all of these. Canva is free. There is a pay version, but the free version has a lot of stuff. KDP is free to use. So there's so many pros to self-publishing now. You get your work out. It's out, and people are going to read it if you self-publish it, instead of engaging in the nonsense that I just described. So there's a lot. I mean, I just think there's so many pros. The cons to self-publishing is that there's a real stigma about the prestige of it. And if you don't care about that, if you just want people to read your book, then I say self-publish it. If you just are like, I have good work, I want people to read it, then do it. If you self-publish, you're not sharing royalties with somebody else. You're going to make all of that money. And I know a lot of people who write, especially fiction, and they do very well, especially on KDP, because they just want people to read their books. They can price them really low, and people will read them. And you can also sell electronic versions. I mean, my goodness, there's just so many pros if that is your goal. If prestige and being part of, you know, the literary canon and having the literary folks care about what you've done, then those are some of the cons. Winning contests after you've published a book is a lot harder for self-published books. So there are pros and there are cons. It's easier than it's ever been, and I was going to show you. Oh, I forgot to show you this. This is, it's called rejectionwiki.com, and you can go here and post, or and search, let's see, this is my magazine, and you can search for any magazine, any publisher, and somebody has come in and posted our rejection, and they'll say, is this a standard rejection? And these are, which means that a standard rejection went out to 3,000 or 2,900 people. And then 30 people got a personalized rejection. That was just because they were so good, but we couldn't publish them. And bigger magazines have like pages and pages and pages. So if you want to know if it was a personalized rejection, you can come to this website to find out. You want to know, because if it was personal, you won. It's almost as good as being published, and you want to send them work again. A lot of times our personal rejection says, please send us work again. And if a publisher says that, they mean it. Don't go, oh, maybe they didn't mean it. They did. We will not tell people to do that if we don't really mean it. And then I wanted to show you the back end of KDP. KDP, again, it's free to set up. All you do is you come in here and you say create, and then you start putting your books up. And I really had no idea how to do this, and I figured it out. So you can too if you decide you want to self-publish. Questions? I went through the last 2 points too fast. I need 2 hours next time. Every time. Mm-hmm. Sure. There's several ways. So sometimes children's book publishers, the writer pitches to an agent or to a press the book, the idea, even the words, and they will hook you up with an illustrator. Sometimes illustrators and writers already are together, and they have made the product when they send it off to be published. So there's 2 ways. Rarely an illustrator says, I have this idea for a book, find me a writer. Children's book writing is a bit of a different beast. It's more of an agented endeavor than a small press endeavor, but there are small presses publishing children's books, so you might be able to kind of go this route and publish a children's book. I would suggest because I've done this interestingly in the last year. If you're the writer part of a children's book writer, finding an illustrator yourself. So I've hooked writers up with illustrators. And if you don't have an illustrator, I would go to Facebook and go to artist pages, illustrator pages, and find somebody there who you want to work with. Because if you have the product already illustrated, I think it's easier to get published. How do you find a publisher? Sure. So if I were a children's book writer, I would get an agent. And so Duotrope has agent search features, and it'll tell you what they publish. Do they represent? Do they represent children's books? Do they represent fiction? Do they represent memoir? So you would find the ones that represent children's books, and then you would write them the pitch letter. And if they are interested in looking at the book, you can go to agent websites, and that's something that I've done too, is you can find a list of literary agent company's the wrong word, but I'm not going to be able to come up with the right word, and look at all of the agents that work for that company and what they're looking for. There is a page, and I'll never be able to tell you what it is, that has a list of agents that are looking now, and I get their email. You can subscribe to it. I'm sure Googling would bring it up. And so they'll say this agent is now on the market, basically on the dating scene, and they're looking for these 2-3 things. So a deep internet dive would probably help you find that. And then you just start, writing pitch letters to agents. That's what I would do. It sounds hard. I wouldn't write children's books, but you could self-publish them too. The book you published? No. So this is a very good question. So a lot of writers want to put their stuff on their website, or they want to put it on Instagram, or they want to put it on Facebook. Once you've done it, it's over. It's published. So when I said work small to big, I would, if you're serious, I would never put your work. I know people get famous by putting stuff up on Instagram, but it's likely not going to be us. So I just wouldn't do it ever. People will send us submission. They'll say, "Oh, it's on my website. Here's the link," and it's like it's done skis once it's out there. So it's published already. If you self-publish, it's published, and no publisher will ever take it. Now, there are a few publishers that republish books that have gone out of print, or like the publishing house folded, and they reprint them. Sundress is one of them, but I don't know that they would do self-published. So it is such a risk. Go for it. What are you writing? Oh, yeah. I would find self-help books that you liked, and who's publishing them, and you can pitch. A lot of times those publishing houses will take unagented pitches, and in that case, that's what you could get an agent too. So when I said no, you don't need an agent, and then all of you are giving me examples of needing one. One would definitely help in that scenario, but there's lots of them who will say for a week or a month, we're going to take unagented submissions and pitches. And so that's what I would do if it were me. So any self-help book that you've read that you really liked, or that's like what you're doing, find out who the publisher is, and then how you send them work, if they'll take it from people who don't have agents or not. that world is probably as small as the poetry world. Make friends with the writers. Find out who's their agent. Find out if they're willing to say, hey, I read this guy's book. Would you take a look at it? So I do consultations, and some of those people I'll say, hey, I know this person, you should send your work there. And then I'll say, hey, this person I worked with is going to send you some work. And they'll go, okay, I'll look for it. You know, it is a very small world, so they may be willing to put you in the door. Self-help book, yeah. I bet those are hard, I think. I think one thing with a book like that is if you self-published it and it does well, you know, because you could tell an agent on the next one, I self-published this one, these are my sales numbers. An agent's going to go, oh, that's interesting. So that might be a route to doing it too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is important. The first book is not the book. You know, the book is the next book. It will always be. And so I have people I work with, and they'll say, well, I think I should switch these things out, or it's just not done. All this stuff is better because that's the new stuff. That's more me. And stop. Work with the thing that you have. There will be a next book, I promise. So move forward and make new work. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I know there are YouTubers who then write books, and they probably can waltz themselves into Random House and say, I have 3 million followers, and it doesn't matter what they've written, they're going to publish their book. Yes, yes. And I know people get Instagram famous. That could be a thing. I mean, I think self-help, you know, people are going to share and like a little inspirational whatever, a quote is very different from like an essay or a chapter. So you quote all day, all over the place on Instagram and Twitter. That's for you, it's different advice, because when somebody shares that 10 million times and you say to the agent or to the publisher, you know, this is how many followers I have, or this is how many times this thing has been shared. Yeah, if you can grow a following or a fan base somehow, do it. It doesn't really work for poetry as much unless you're, you know, like Rupi Kapoor, and she's basically a self-help writer anyway, so it's just different than the more literary avenue, which is definitely sort of what I'm showing you here. But yeah. Well, I think like if we're talking about Rupi Kapoor, yeah, and there have been 2 or 3 people whose names I'll never come up with who followed in her wake, who are all over. They have 12 books at Barnes and Noble next to hers, and I'm gonna look down my nose at it because they all kind of are the same. But yes. But that's also like winning they're the first round draft picks or, you know, and so for the vast majority of us, we're going to live in the middle, creating beauty and literature, I hope. And I hate to like pour all this business on you, because the writing is the thing that matters. And I know you want people to read it, and that's why we talk about this, but I don't want to say don't be Rupi Kapoor, because if I could have my book in Barnes & Noble, I don't think that I would be, upset by it. But I just don't, how many times is it going to happen? Probably 3 times a year to that person. So I don't know. I'm not sure that's the way. Maybe do both things. Do this and that. Yeah. Does anybody else have questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you start a magazine, or how do you read it? You want to have your own. Do it. Okay, good. These are all good questions. Yeah. So I had my youngest daughter, and I said, I'm trapped in my house. I'm miserable. I have postpartum depression. I'm going to start a literary magazine. My brother and I started it. And so the cost depends on what you're doing. And we used Squarespace, and we paid per month at first, because we had no money and we paid out of pocket. But you could find a free website, and you could just start your own magazine. Go for it. Do it. How copyright works is, you ask people to send you stuff, and then you send them a contract. Ours is just an email, and it says, we get first North American serial rights, and they say yes. And you go to the email, that's the contract. You start your magazine. So this is Harbor Review, and this is our first issue. And I said, hey, send me art and send me poems. And what we do is we put poetry in conversation with art, so we sort of pair them, and you can see, the art and the poems hanging out with each other. And now we have, a massive staff across the country and the world. Diana lives in Romania. She's our art director. So, we have tons of people, and we run contests, and we pay our artists and poets now. So you just kind of grow it and start small. Get people to send you poems and put them up on a website. The more we take back art from, the powers that be, who decide what is good and what is not, I just encourage that. I'm teaching an intro to creative writing class, and somebody said, well, you have to teach poetry magazine because that's the best. And I just thought, are you kidding me? Go to Blanket Sea, where disabled people are writing poems and making art. That's not the best. There's a million literary magazines that are online that aren't something you hold in your hands, that are doing work that's just unbelievable. So do start one. Yeah. We do run, we do donations now. So we're nonprofit now. And so we do ask for donations, but the magazine makes their money from, we run contests for micro chat books. So people pay, I think it's $10 now. So these are a few of them. That one's beautiful. They pay $10 to submit to this micro chat book contest. And the vast majority of the money goes back out. So the winner gets $200. But then a little bit of it kind of feeds the magazine still, but we do get donations. We run 2 or 3 a year. We have very little money. We're a nonprofit. Yes, this is our website. Mm-hmm. Nobody pays to read it. You just go read it. So go to Harbor Review and read it. To read? Because I want you to have it. So like Poetry Magazine, you can read it at the library for free, which you should. And Poetry Magazine is lovely, and they are doing good, hard work to not be Poetry Magazine anymore. But, you know, people are putting work online now so that everybody can have access to it. You don't have to have a subscription to get it or live near a library. You know, lots of people can't get to the library to get it. So it's got to be online, and we don't want to charge folks to read it. You could. People charge for downloads now, like you could read it, but if you want to download it, you could charge, or we could charge for these micro chapbooks. You could charge to download something like that, but we want people to read it. Squarespace is, you would have to do it, but I promise you I know nothing about technology, and I have created 3 websites. You can do it. I believe in you. And they have a help section, and what you do is you just make one badly, and then you kind of fix it. So mess up a lot. That's my suggestion, even for publishing. So, you know, I sent out to the wrong places sometimes, and my first acceptance for a chapbook, I was so excited, but I hadn't researched it really, and then I realized that it was a little bit of a pay-to-publish situation, and I had to say no. So go ahead and mess up. There's always gonna be another book, and who cares? Mess it up badly. But you can do it. If I can do it, I swear. You can just go to Squarespace. Is free to try out too. I feel like an advertisement for Squarespace. But I used it because it was the most intuitive, and it's the easiest. It's not like WordPress. I think that's really hard. But you can get on there and do it for free and create like a site. You don't have to pay until you put it on the internet. So you can practice and see if you like it. And you can email me if you have other questions. I'm happy to. So people from the other sessions have definitely emailed, and I'm happy to. Did you have another one? Yeah, no, okay. No, not the magazine. Yeah, so I also run, now I'm an advertise for myself. So after we were a magazine, and then we became a nonprofit, now we're a press. So these are all the books that we publish, and these are chapbooks, and these are books, and this is how you submit. And so most of the places that you submit to, that's a square or a submittable button somewhere. Oh, here it is. There's a submittable button. And so people do pay that way on the press side. I wouldn't do it. So not like that. So a lot of physical presses, they go to a printer, and they print their books, and they bring them home in boxes, and they put stamps on them, and they send them out, and a human does it. And so that's one reason we use KDP, because it's print on demand. I do have books in my house that I send to bookstores and stuff, but I don't have boxes and boxes and boxes of all of these books just hanging around that I'm responsible for the overhead. So the same people who are self-publishing, I'm using the exact same service to publish as a press. So if I were to physically publish our magazine, which we will do someday, as like, you know, collector books, but I would use print on demand, because then your subscribers, you would have to send to subscribers who've paid for the magazine through KDP, and that would probably be tedious for a human to manage, but no more tedious than putting something in an envelope and stamping it and mailing it and weighing it. So you just put in the information, and that seems so much easier. That's not the we hate Amazon answer, and I hate Amazon too. Like I hate them as much as everybody does, but they've really leveled the playing field for publishers in a way that, we have to just say thank you, even though we hate them, because it's easier than Ingram is the thing that if you're hoity-toity about Amazon that you go to and you do your print on demand through Ingram, and they are better. They are able to get your books more places, but it's also a more difficult service to learn. At least it was for me. I'm just a regular human who knows nothing about anything, and I figured it out, so I know you can. And if you want it, I think if you want to print one too, why not make a zine? I know we're way over our time, but make a zine. There's a book called, I think it's A Girl's Guide to Taking Over the World, something like that. And it's a much older book from when, girl power feminist zines were really super popular, but it's just a book of zines. And zines are it's a handmade kind of magazine where people draw in it, and you might, tape the poem in and then photocopy it at Kinko's, and you could, just hand them out, and you could be real revolutionary about it and sell them in the library without permission, and, put them around town. There are presses, so 2 of my chapbooks are through Seven Kitchens Press, and he hand stitches his. So somebody prints them, probably Kinko's, and then he gets the covers nicely printed, and then he takes thread and a needle and he stitches the interior. And so anytime you see him anywhere, he's stitching books. So if you order one from him, he has to stitch it up and then mail it out. And that's the thing itself is this beautiful piece of art in that case. But so I would either do Amazon or I would do a zine if I was going to make something physical, because you could do whatever you wanted in that case without the overhead. Just 5 cents per page. Good questions. Does anybody else have questions? Oh, the symphony's nice. Yeah, thank you for coming. And come to the hybrid writing, because we're going to make broadsides. So we're going to make some beautiful art and talk about my favorite thing, which is hybrid writing. You could self-help a broadside, I think. I've been here all summer. So next month is sadly my last month. This is my absolute favorite thing that I have ever done as a writer. It's so fun. And they give me a room up there where I sit in my hard chair and I work without my children. And it's just amazing. Yeah.